How does that?
Okay, that'll work.
All
You
right.
want to? I mean, the camera's on top of the monitor. Is that what's going on?
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's a big monitor, so I got to.
Wow. Yeah.
The only other thing I do is I'd have to uh, take take it around and put it down on the desk,
Uh huh.
and may have to shut it off, undo the wire, and get it down that way if I have to
Well,
do
I
that.
think this is fine.
Okay.
This is
Do you
good.
think I should have a pillow under me to make myself higher? So you can see more of me? Or is what you see enough?
I think this is fine. I don't want it to be any trouble.
Okay.
You know, make it simple.
Now I have to see what I'm doing here. Well, all
Can
right.
you see enough?
We have sunlight coming in, so I have
Yeah.
my big magnifier anyway. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I have to read my writing.
See if this helps.
Somewhat. I said I have to keep looking over this way. Okay. Do I begin? I passed?
You're just going to read a statement? Is that what you're
I hear
planning?
you.
Huh? I said you're just going to read a statement?
I know you're talking because I see your lips moving, but I don't hear you.
Oh.
Because you put speakers on mute somehow.
Oh, I did?
Yeah.
How did I do that?
By putting on one of these keys.
Oh. Can you hear
All
me
right, Belle
now?
put the speakers on mute, so let me find
Oh, you can unmute. Okay.
Sorry.
the proper keys to undo that. Uh, that should do it.
Say something, Jeff.
Hello?
No?
No, I don't hear it.
There you go. Say it again.
Hello?
There you
Hello.
go.
Is
Okay.
that all you can think of to say?
Okay.
That was about it. So you're going to read a statement, is what your plan
Well,
is?
I have my notes here.
Okay.
I tried to organize it into something.
Let me
All
push-
right. Well, that's fine.
I'm going to push the keyboard a little bit out of the way so
So you
there's
don't
no
mute.
inadvertent pushing of key buttons again.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
All right. Well, if you
Well,
want to read, go
I'm
ahead.
gonna- Hello?
Go ahead.
I'm the only person alive who knows Pearl from when she was not even Pearl, from before she was born.
Hmm.
And so I'm the only one who's an authority on her early years. I can say anything I want to, but I'll try to stick to the truth. Okay?
Okay.
All right. First, some background. I was an only child for quite some time until Pearl was born. And as an only child, I had all the attention, but I was very lonely. I didn't realize how lonely I was, even though I had many friends and I had all the time lots of adult companionship. And but I missed something, and I knew what I missed when I finally got a sister. And I remember how excited I was about having a sister. Pearl, I want you to know, was the most wanted person, most wanted baby on this planet. Because when Mom got married to Pearl's dad, um, it was a custom in those days to present your husband with a baby right away. And she really tried. She had 3 miscarriages, one year after the other, until she finally had Pearl. And that was such a joy because Pearl was the most beautiful. I didn't think this was going to happen. She was the most beautiful kid in the world. She was so adorable. And I really realized how lonely I had been all those years. I was very appreciative of the fact that I had a sister. And I took a great part in taking care of her, and I used to pretend that she was my baby. And anyway, she was. She came along, but she was born in February, and I was going to be 15 in April. And at that time, the semesters at college were, well, as they are now, but not for the whole year. I went to a city college, and and I had just started college in February. So I was in my first semester, and at Brooklyn College, where I went, they had first 2 years, they told you what to study. They had a core curriculum where you had to take, they felt that this was a basis for further education. And they gave you a taste of everything so that you could try out what you wanted to be and finally choose a major, which seems to make a lot of sense to me even now. So, well, Belle was born in February, so by the time the summer came around, and or the late fall, when she was sitting in a high chair, and she was able to be fed in a high chair, I had the task of feeding her. Well, not a task, it was a joy, really, except that she was such a rotten eater. So, she was terrible. You wouldn't think that from the way she eats now, but at any rate, um, she had she had since I was studying, and I was reading my books aloud to her. So she very early got acquainted with books and books telling stories and so on, and she loved to listen. In fact, she only ate when she listened. So she had um, Plato and Plutarch with her pablum, and she had Socrates and Sophocles with her smashed up other kinds of stuff that they ate, that you feed babies when they're little. And she enjoyed it very much. Later on, when she was out on her own, like about 2 years old, she, well, anyway, the fact that she had all this philosophy and so on in her early years, I think gives her a greater insight into her philosophy studies now with her beloved Jean. And at any rate, when she was on her own and started walking around outside the house, and I must tell you, we lived in a modern house, or brick house. Uh, we had a backyard, and we had a front yard, and she loved everything in nature, everything in nature, ever since she was a little girl. She walked along and she ate whatever she found. She tasted coal, bits of coal. She enjoyed them, I think. She had mud. She tasted sand. She even ate a caterpillar from the backyard.
Did you assist in this matter, or did she do this on
No,
her own?
no, she did herself. She told us that she ate the caterpillar. I didn't see her.
Oh.
I don't know whether it was a product of her imagination or whether she did eat it, but she could do anything. She was a very determined little girl.
Mm-hmm.
And she said it tasted tickly. So who knows? She also ate other things from the backyard. We had sunflower uh, plants that grew nice and tall, and sometimes the seeds were on the floor, on the ground, and she picked those up and she ate those. She liked to suck on the honeysuckle little flowers. And of course, in the front yard, we had irises and very colorful things, the 4 o'clocks. So who knows, she might have eaten those too. We tried to control what she ate and give her good food. But as I say, she was a terrible eater. So anyway, that went on. Now let me see what else I wrote down that I should tell you.
Mm-hmm. How was it like with your mom working? And
She was home when Pearl was, right after Pearl was born. She nursed Pearl for quite some months.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't go back to work until much later.
Mm-hmm.
She stayed home, I think, for the first year.
Yeah.
After that, she went back to work. But, all right. So Anyway, I feel that she developed that feeling for nature and for natural things that stays with her even now. And I think that the beginnings of yearning for using her hands in pottery came from the mud that she played with and that kind of stuff. So I think all that came back to her very beginnings. When she finally went to school, she found out, or we all found out, that her world had been a very fuzzy world, and we must have all looked beautiful to her because she has to get glasses. And then she said she found out that people look different. She really saw what we look like. So I hope we didn't disappoint her. Anyway, we got along fine. Um, uh, when she was in kindergarten, she discovered how politics works. And she became very interested in her civic duties, and that remains with her to this day. Um, there was a policeman living in the very next attached building to us, the house to us. Mr. Weinstein, he was a lovely man, very, very nice, very kind and sweet. And Pearl came home from kindergarten in her very determined manner. She went right up to his door to ring his bell because she had something to tell him. And we thought, well, maybe if he were home, he might be sleeping or resting, and we tried to restrain her. But as I say, she was rather determined, and she knew she had to do this. She rang his bell, and sure enough, he came to the door, looking a little sleepy, but he smiled nevertheless when he saw Pearl. She was so cute to look at. And she sang him a song. I don't know if she still remembers it. The policeman dressed in blue is a friend to me and you. He stood there and he listened to the whole song and he patted her on the head and he said thank you, and that was it. But that's the kind of kid she was. And then I love to see her play outside and to do all the things that I was never permitted to do. She had a sidewalk bike. She had skates. I was never permitted to have that. I was brought up by my grandmother who said that girls don't climb trees and girls don't whistle and they don't use skates or anything that could get hurt, you know. Mm-hmm. And so I was brought up to be very protective. But I'm still afraid of a lot of things. I don't swim because I'm still afraid, and because once I almost drowned anyway. So at any rate, and that was it. Then as I grew older, and oh yes, I have to tell you this story about when she was a little girl and still was a very poor eater, and we tried everything. We always read to her, you know, to listen. And my friend Bessie, who was a classmate of mine, came to visit very often, and she loved Pearl very much. And she had a very fine imagination. She told fanciful stories so that Pearl would eat. And the story that I think we all remember, probably Pearl too, is a story about the girl who wouldn't eat her soup. And that was because Pearl wouldn't eat her soup. It was a Cinderella-like story where she couldn't go to the ball and dance with the prince unless she ate her soup. And that was it. So, let's see. Then, as I grew older and started having boyfriends, and a bunch of them used to have a sort of meeting on the front stoop and just hang around. And Pearl liked playing with them too, and they loved her because she was a cute little kid. And she particularly liked one boy whose claim to fame was that he belched on demand. And she used to enjoy it. She still remembers it, I think. And she used to pat him on the belly, and every time she patted him on the belly, he belched for her.
How old was she at that point?
What?
How old was she at that point?
Let's see. I must have been about 16, 17, maybe 18. So 18. No, it must have been when she was about 5, because she was out on her own on the stoop.
Mm-hmm.
So 5, 16. I was almost 20, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been earlier. Maybe she was only 4 when she enjoyed those belches.
Mm-hmm.
If you check with her, I think she'll remember him.
Okay.
I still remember his name, but anyway, that was a quick. She was also very fond of Will. She loved when Will finally became my fella. Um, she used to climb up on the couch so that she could um, really stand up and smell his hair, because she loved the smell of Vitalis. That really set her off. Anyway, one time during the summer, I think when we were going steady already, um, I was away visiting some friends in the country, and I was away for a few days, and Will decided to walk over to the house and just visit the family and visit Pearl. And of course, she's climbed up on the couch and smelled his hair, and they sat together and chatted. And he invited her to go out for a walk with him. And she said, okay. And do you know this story? Have you heard this story?
Well, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Anyway, they walked, and they got to the crosswalk, and where he had to cross the street. And he reached for her hand, and she refused to give it to him. And he said, why not? I have to take care of you. And she said, not on the first date. And they continued. So they continued walking and for a few blocks, and then they turned around and started to walk back. And Will said to her, "Well, now that we're coming back, this is the second date. So will you hold my hand?" And she said yes, and that was it. So she stuck to her own rules.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now what else do I have written here? Oh, when Will and I got married, and Pearl and little Evie were the flower girls, and she and little Evie had beautiful dresses made of that lovely material, changeable taffeta, that Mom and Aunt Rose made for the 2 little girls, and they looked adorable, and they were very fine flower girls. They saved some of the petals, though, and they used them for other purposes. So you see, here again, she was learning to use materials in different ways. She was innovative, as well as determined to do what she liked to do. They had a great time at the wedding, as did we all. And, and unfortunately, we were married for only 6 months when Lou, Pearl's dad, had a heart attack and died. So we didn't want to leave Pearl and Mom alone. So we gave up our little apartment and we moved back to Brooklyn. And we stayed there and lived there with them until Harriet was born. And I think Pearl was just 10. Harriet was born in June, and Pearl was 10 in February, just before that. And Pearl was the most marvelous, not just babysitter, but baby caregiver. She was my first assistant and really prime material. And that's where she learned her parenting skills, so that she could pass them on to her boys. And because when Dr. Spock and I told Pearl what to do, she followed through. She did it. If I told my mom or asked her to do a certain thing a certain way, she didn't do that. She did what she thought was good. And the same thing happened with my mother-in-law, who came over very frequently to see her little granddaughter. And they meant well, but of course I was very strict. I had to be. I had to assert myself.
Well, when you say you were strict, you were.
Following Dr. Spock's rules.
Oh,
Dr.
you
Spock,
were gonna follow Dr. Spock, and
absolutely.
so what did?
That was the thing to do. I mean, things were so different. In those days, you didn't give birth naturally. I mean, everything changed when Pearl got married, and all that. Everything was different. And you had assistance when you gave birth. You didn't give birth naturally, and you and you didn't breastfeed. I mean, that was anti-feminist. I mean, that was terrible. And so I didn't breastfeed, didn't do any of those things. And we had to be chained to bottles, you know. At any rate, what else? You know, I think that people get to be, I mean, you sort of know what they're going to get to be in life from the very, very beginning. Take you, Jeff, for example. Yeah, you yourself. When you were a little boy, your parents were all ready to throw out some kind of a record player that they said didn't work. They didn't want it anymore. And you begged them to please let you have it because you wanted to play with it. Because you loved to sit and watch things spinning around, especially records. So they said, okay, let them have fun. And I don't know how or how it happened, but you fixed it. You fixed it. You got it to run again. So there you see, and now you're in hi-fi.
Right, still trying to get it to run.
Well, you did get it to run.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you remember anything about that.
Well, what I recall of that story is that according to my reasoning,
yeah,
I had diagnosed the problem was that it had been spinning one way for too long. It always turned in the same direction, and therefore, if you spun it the other way, it was too wound up, was my diagnosis. So I spun it back the other way, and for some reason, it worked.
Well, for that very reason, you see, you were able to analyze it.
Yes.
And here you are, a famous character in hi-fi,
Right.
doing your own inventions and things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, now, Pearl, take Harriet, for example. She started to read when she was 3, and she was always so fascinated with words, you know. And now she's a distinguished linguist. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Take, Pearl, in the very beginning, when she tasted everything, that was unusual. She still does that. She goes on trips with her people from wherever in Phoenix, and I'm not in Phoenix, in
Tucson.
Arizona, Tucson, with her Havara and her other people that she goes out with, and they choose various different restaurants to go to. And when your dad was alive, she and your dad were very interested in groups that, tasted different cuisines, different countries. And your mother herself is a wonderful cook. And I think she learned to, and vegetarian and all that kind of stuff. She does all that wonderful stuff. A cooker and a baker and all that. Of course, she had Bobby to inspire her because she was a very wonderful cook and a wonderful baker. And let me see, who else could I take? I'll take Lenny, for example. I remember taking him to the Museum of Natural History, and he was going to be an ichthyologist until he went to college and graduate school, and he discovered computers. Mm-hmm. And he's very good at computers, still is probably. But he still has a deep love of marine life and of flowers, because he was always attracted to that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So there you have it. And then, David, he was always very well organized and still can do all. Whenever I came to your house, if I didn't know where something was, I just asked David, and he told me where it was. he seemed to know where everything belonged, and maybe he arranged it that way. Who knows? But
That's true.
that was it. And Ken, who was let's see, what was Ken's hobby or his interest besides bothering all the rest of you kids? Do you remember? I don't know if you remember, but when you were young kids, I think, well, Lenny was always the oldest, and he was a big boy for his age. He was always big. And you kids were being harassed by some neighbor boys, and somebody called one of you a dirty Jew, and so they said, "We'll get our big brother." And Lenny came out and said, "Who's blah 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 blah?" You know, he cast his weight around, and they stopped bothering him, which was very nice. Even though one of the kids was saying that his cousin is a policeman or something like that, to scare you. I'm trying to think about what Ken. Well, he was always interested in books and in doing such kinds of research. And now he's a filmmaker and doing instructional films. Is that right?
Yes, he's also
And he also collects books.
right, and selling books on eBay.
And selling books. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
buying
right.
box lots of books.
Yeah. So I think, that sort of thing starts early, very early.
Hmm.
Okay? And
So when you were young, what was your spark? What was your interest?
my interest. Well, my interest was in getting two skates. Because when I went to visit my cousins, they each had a pair of skates. But they were very kind people. Harriet and Evie, you remember? And, but they wouldn't lend me more than one skate. So I learned to skate with one skate, but that wasn't much skating. So my interests, I guess, were I was always interested in reading. I always read, and that was my hobby. And I remember going to visit my other cousins who had, they were very Sabbath observant. And I came to their house for the weekend, and nobody bothered me. I had their whole great big library room, and it was really like a library because they had these Harvard shelves of books, and I could take anything I wanted. And I just sat there all day and read, and that was fine for me. I liked it. But I had a lot more stuff written down.
All right.
I was going to tell you about when Pearl was a little girl, and at that time it was still, horses and wagons, and they had an ice wagon that used to come by to deliver ice because we didn't have refrigerators. We had ice boxes where you got a chunk of ice from the iceman, and of course on his wagon he had to chip the ice into blocks, into like a 25-pound block, or depending on the size of your refrigerator. And and he and then he left a lot of chips, of course, on the back of his truck. So the kids would follow him on the street so that they could catch up. When he went into the house to deliver stuff, they stayed at his wagon, at his truck, and they took all the chips of ice they could find, and they had a wonderful time, especially in the summer. That was the time that. They also started having gas refrigerators, but at that time they had a little mechanism connected to the gas company where you put a quarter in, and some smart aleck, I remember hearing the story, I don't remember ever seeing it done, some smart aleck froze a piece of ice, in the shape of a quarter, and tried putting it in. I think it worked for a little bit, for a couple of minutes, till it melted. Anyway, but finally we got gas refrigerator, real gas refrigerator. So nobody had to carry out the can of water that was underneath underneath the icebox. And of course, the shopping also was by horse and wagon. They had the fruit truck came, so Pearl was always exposed to all these fresh fruits and vegetables that the man brought on the wagon, and all the ladies came out and they did their shopping that way. And then there was a fish wagon that came along, where the fresh fish was out there, and you came and bought whatever fish you wanted. And of course, people were very neighborly. Pearl was able to taste things like patlagel, which is the Romanian version of eggplant spread. That because our neighbor across the alley was Romanian, and they shared recipes. She, my mother, and so on. And what else? And then of course, Bobby brought stuff. Because by this time she had gotten married and lived all the way in Williamsburg. And I remember after school I used to go on the subway and travel to Williamsburg on Friday afternoons and bring home lots of stuff in big shopping bags. I walked into the subway with my shopping bags. Everybody was swooned because it smelled so wonderful.
When you say booby, you're talking about
my mother's mother. My mother's mother.
Your mother's mother. Okay.
Yeah. She and my mother brought me up. My mother went to work and she took care of me.
Was that Hoodle? You mean?
Yeah. That was before I grew up, got married, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Right. So, so it was all horse and buggy at that point? There were no cars?
I think one of the first cars I rode in was Uncle Ben bought a car, and he learned to drive, and he wanted his wife Tilly to learn to drive. But both of them were too nervous to drive. So, so the car didn't do them much good unless they had someone driving it for them. Mm-hmm. Luckily, he was rich enough at that time to have someone drive it for them. Mm-hmm. But I remember riding in that car. Yeah. So we did have beginnings of cars then. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And,
did you have a radio?
We had a radio. As a matter of fact, Pearl's father courted Mom over the telephone. Oh, we had a telephone.
Oh.
Yeah. And he courted her over the telephone, and he played his radio, because he had a radio. And he played his radio so we could both hear it over the telephone. And it was a wonderful adventure. Mm-hmm. Of course, when I was being courted by Will, he was always working on radios and making his own radios and so on. So by then it was sort of old hat, But what else did we have? The shopping was quite different, because when you went shopping, you didn't have wrapped up packages of cream cheese. There was a big tub, and they served you as much cream cheese as you wanted, half a pound, quarter pound. Same thing with butter. Mm-hmm. You didn't have wrapped packages of butter.
Well, did they cut it with a wire cutter, or?
No, I think they used a big flat wooden, not exactly a scoop, but it had a handle, and it was a big flat thing, a little bit of a curve to it. Uh-huh. You could scoop it out like that.
Oh, okay.
Maybe they used a wire cutter. I don't remember seeing a wire cutter.
Well, I'd seen it used at Barney Greengrass, where they...
Well, that's modern.
I know. Well, it looks pretty old-fashioned to me, but well, it's a matter of your perspective.
There are a lot of things that look old-fashioned to you.
Yeah. So the sounds that you would hear in the house, you eventually had a radio.
Yeah.
But I mean, you'd be hearing horses clopping by and wagons being drawn, and.
Well, by that time there were more and more cars.
Okay.
So you hear cars as well.
Okay.
Of course, we had in New York City, we had wonderful transportation. Mm-hmm. We had trolley cars. Mm-hmm. We had buses, well, mostly trolley cars, some buses. We had the subways, which in my area were what do you call it? Elevator trains.
Right.
I remember Lenny standing with me on the elevated platform of my station, and he said, "Aren't you scared? Because it's up so high, you know." And what else? But there, I think those were the important things, and I think that people have their beginnings at the very beginning. Their careers sort of laid out for them. And my career was in books and reading, and I got to be a teacher. That's it. And that's what I taught, reading.
Well, I was
That's how I ended up.
surprised to hear that you told me that your major was you were an economist.
That's right. That's because I fell in love with my economics teacher. She was wonderful. She was so inspiring. And she set me on the path to changing the world and making it a better place to live,
Mm-hmm.
which meant being a radical.
Uh-huh. Okay. So how'd that work out?
Well, it had its dangers. It led to Will, who was working at the time when we were first married as an engineer at the Navy Yard. That was, let's see, 1938. So that was kind of perilous times. And and it led to the fact that I don't know how it came about, but the FBI came around querying all our neighbors and all that. And finally he was fired after a very grueling examination and nearly made him faint because they were so rough.
Wow. That was in 38?
While I was pregnant.
Uh-huh.
That was Harriet was born 1941, that was 1940.
1940. So what were their concerns? What were they looking for?
Communists.
I see. It was a Red Scare.
That's right.
And you and Willie were both communists at that point, or you had joined, or?
Is it safe to talk?
I think so. I think now it doesn't matter.
Yeah, sure. I was the youth movement, the YCL, Young Communist League.
Mhm.
Will wasn't, but I was,
I see.
and they accused him of trying to protect his wife. So he lost his job, and he's not very happy about that because he had a pregnant wife.
Right.
Yeah.
So what did he do next?
He had a friend who got him a job at in the city transportation department as an engineer also.
Okay. How did he wind up in the parts repping business?
Well, he went to from working for the city. He guess he made application to the American. They're a very, very large company, American Electric, and he got a job there doing engineering work. And we made some very nice friends there. He had a very nice few years there. And about the time that that he decided he would never become rich that way. He would always be working for somebody else, you know. And I guess he got acquainted with some people who were in the distribution or something business. And he always knew a lot about electronics because he was always interested in it. And he decided that he was going to quit and work in the distribution business. And he went to resign, and that was the time that Death of a Salesman, the play. Remember the play?
The Arthur Miller play, yes.
Yeah. Well, that was the time it was on Broadway. Of course, we had seen it. And the president of the company, who liked Will very much and tried to make him stay, um, reminded him about the play. He said, "Have you seen Death of a Salesman?" Because essentially that was what he was going to get to be. And he said yes, but he's willing to take his chances. And so he did. And that was about the time that I was active in the Parents Association at my school, at the school at Harriet and Bruce Wenson. And I wrote a letter to the principal, and I told him that my husband was trying to earn a living, doing just something different, and I would like to. I was active in the school, and in the Parents Association, the Child Study Association, all that kind of stuff. And if there were an opening somehow, as a substitute or something like that, I'd appreciate his considering me. So he told me that there were examinations being given, so I took an exam, and I passed, and that was for the, not for the regular teacher, but for substitute. Mm-hmm. And it so happened that one of the teachers in the first grade was having back trouble and was taking a leave of absence. So I got her class. And I knew very little about teaching, actually, because even though I had a master's in so, blah, 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 I didn't know about anything so practical as teaching in front of a class. So believe it or not, my principal came in, took the class over, and he sent me to an experienced first grade teacher to sit there for an hour and watch what she was doing. And I learned that way. Mm-hmm. He was a wonderful person, very lucky with the men in my life. Mm-hmm. And so I got to be a teacher. And then I took the regular examination. And on that was a more serious thing. And we had a newspaper called The Sun, or the Telegram Sun, in which they catered to teachers. At one page they had for teachers exam results and all that kind of stuff. And so when the exam results came out for that, the assistant principal said, "You take the bottom of the page and I'll take the top, and we'll look for your name." So I was starting at the bottom, and all of a sudden I hear this scream, and he said, "You're number 2." So when I called Will to tell him, he said, "So why weren't you number 1?" So that's the kind of appreciation I got.
Right.
But anyway, so I had a job. That's nice. Mm-hmm. So that was sort of a backup for Will when he was. Why am I talking about myself? I'm supposed to be talking about Pearl.
Okay. Well, that's all right.
I'm so proud of Pearl. She's gotten to be a poet, mm-hmm. and a philosopher, and of course she's a potter. I think she's wonderful, all the things that she's done, besides raising 4 sons. I still have a very clear picture of visiting you guys in, it wasn't the big house, it was the smaller house where you lived across the street from Mona. Mm-hmm, yes. And she was just sort of fed up when I came there. She had the windows open in the front bedroom, and she took everything, all your toys, everybody's toys that were on the floor, and she threw them out the window. She said she was just sick and tired of picking up stuff.
Yeah?
She did. So I hope you boys learned your lesson.
Oh, yes, and we never had a problem since that day.
Yeah.
Well, when she was growing up, she described herself as a latchkey kid.
Yeah, because Mom had a store on 18th Avenue, and she used to come home because she was older then, and that was after I think we moved out. She was, because she was there with us until she was 10, and then we didn't move out right away. As a matter of fact, at that time, uh, we went looking for a house, a new house that we could buy, and we thought we'd take Minnie along, and we'd go to. So we went looking for a house, and we went to Queens where they were doing all kinds of beautiful new houses. I think some places, Regal Park, or I forget where. But it was very, very nice. And the house we saw was so nice. I still remember it was a 2-family house, and it had a finished basement, because ours was not finished. And, but we couldn't afford the down payment. All we needed was $1,000 for down payment. Mom didn't have the money. We went to Uncle Ben, would lend $1,000. We went to Lou, Harriet's husband, who was a dentist, and dentists usually make money. Nobody was going to lend us $1,000. So we were stuck. We couldn't do that at all. So we found an apartment in the neighborhood, and we lived in the apartment just within walking distance. And so after that time, after she was 10, when we moved out, must have been a couple of years, no, it must have been about 10. And that's when I guess she was a latchkey kid. Because before that, when I was working, I had hired someone, a very nice black lady, who cooked, who came and picked Pearl up for lunch, or Pearl came home for lunch, and gave her lunch, and then she cooked dinner for us. And she was very nice. But I guess, after Harriet was born, I was home, so I didn't need that lady, so I was there. But by then, Pearl was a big girl.
Right.
10 years old.
So what was your mom like? I mean, when I never really, when I knew her, she was already...
She was old and she was ill.
Yeah, she wasn't really someone I could converse with, and I probably was not someone she could converse with.
My mom had a really tough life, and she was a brave person, and she toughed it out. And she was a very bright woman, very bright. When she really wanted to go to school to become a teacher, and when she graduated from 8th grade, because all you had to do then was go to normal school, what they called normal school, for 2 years, and you were a teacher. But at that time, they only wanted teachers, female teachers, who weren't married and who would not get married, because the law said that if you were a woman and a teacher, you couldn't get married. As a matter of fact, two very good friends of hers who did become teachers never did get married, because by the time that law was canceled, they were middle-aged ladies and was past their time. But her father would not permit that, because it meant she wouldn't get married. And what could be worse for a Jewish father to have a daughter who wasn't married? Yeah. So he sent her to business school to get to be a bookkeeper for 6 months. And that's what she was. And she got a job. She worked for $5 a week, which was big money then. And that was it.
And your dad was...
And then, of course, when she married my father, he said he was never sick a day in his life, so he didn't believe in insurance. Okay. And then it turned out that he not only had diabetes, which weakened him, so that in the 1919 epidemic, he was one of the first to go.
Oh, boy.
So she was widowed when I was about 3.
Okay, we're going to... there goes the video. I'm sorry, the video froze for a moment.
Yeah.
And now it's back. Okay, that's good.
All right.
So he was a dress cutter.
Yes, he was. He had a very high skill. And he worked for a very good friend of his whom he knew from Europe, because my father was a very, well, at that time, well-educated man. He went to a gymnasium, which not everybody went to. That's supposed to be the equivalent of our high school or further, I think. And then, I'm told that he spoke 7 languages fluently. So he's an educated person. I'm also told that he used to spend time at a certain cafe in Manhattan, Lower Manhattan, where all the poets and artists and writers hung out.
Mm-hmm. An early bohemian.
Early Bohemian, yeah. See, that's where Pearl gets it too, from by osmosis.
I see.
So let me see, there's,
Why don't we, can we take a break here? I can get some water.
oh, all right.
I'm gonna, and also I'm gonna stop the recording and restart it just to make sure that we save the file.
Okay.
All right? So,
Yeah.
we'll take a few minutes here.